Welcome to 14 Days in March from the luxurious G51 studios. My name is Toby Green, and when I say luxurious, I literally mean it's a garage that has a bunch of my stuff in it, and we are broadcasting live on Facebook and Twitter about this episode, which I forgot what I just recently titled it, but basically it has to deal with Jamie Dimon, Wall Street, everything going on. Now, for those folks who are listening live to this podcast and just tuned in, very, very quick summary. Over the next 14 days, I'm going to try to podcast at least once a day about what's going on with the coronavirus locally, nationally, as well as what is going on with Wall Street, because I look at the two as being really connected, and the decisions and choices that our leaders make over the next 14 days is going to influence stuff. So I wanted to get started tonight in regards to something that really upset me. And what was it that upset me was, let me get rid of that music, sorry. What was it that upset me was that I caught a bit on Twitter about JP Morgan. I believe it's the president, maybe it's the chairman, whatever title they give themselves, grand executioner, I don't know. Jamie Dimon's the head of JP Morgan. JP Morgan is one of the four biggest banks on Wall Street. Very massive, very big, very important guy, can get a meeting with Donald Trump anytime he likes, or any president for that matter. So what happened was that he made a statement that really upset me. And let me explain what the statement was. He said, look, recessions are terrible and recessions are bad, but they're not the end of the world. I mean, they're terrible for workers, and if you're unemployed, it really sucks. But for JP Morgan, recessions tend to be a really good time for us to make money. This ticked me off. If you're not upset by this comment, then let me at least try to advise you why you should be upset by it. JP Morgan and his banker cronies are being bailed out as we speak. It is a bailout. That's what's going on. The federal government is coming to the rescue. Now, people say, well, it's not the federal government. It's not your tax dollars. It doesn't matter. Do you understand me? It doesn't matter whether it's tax dollars or it's the Fed. It's money that is going out to bail them out when every time a working person needs help, we are told there's no money for us, or how are you going to pay for it? We never, ever, ever, ever get the option of saying, I'll just go to the Fed and go get some more cash for you. We never get that option. So Jamie Dimon, who's worth $1.3 billion, gets the option of being able to say something this dramatically stupid. Because when they print money up the way they are, and they're doing it through quantitative easing and stock repurchasing agreements, bottom line is this: they're injecting more money into there. And it's going to swell the Fed's balance sheet, which means that if you are going to go buy a veggie burger, we'll say, and you go and buy that delicious veggie burger and it costs you $6, it's likely tomorrow or the next day it'll cost you $7 or $8 or $10. Now, I know that this is going on with toilet paper and with hand sanitizer, so we're not going to talk about that. So my point is this: when we talk about this issue, and Jamie Dimon says stuff like this, it offends me to the core, because people deserve a bailout. People deserve to be helped. This is a bailout. Trump is actually going out of his way not to call it a bailout, so I'm going to keep saying it's a bailout. So let's talk about this bailout. And in order to do that, I'm just angry about this stuff. So in order to kind of bring something, channel it, and just yelling and ranting and raving on a podcast kind of isn't always the best way. So in order to talk about it tonight, I wrote a poem, and I'll be posting the poem on the 14 Days in March website that I got up on Facebook for you to take a look at. Here it's called Come On, Jamie. Dear Mr. Dimon, I think it's time we have a chat. My name is Toby, and I wear a hat. You run JP Morgan, largest bank in the world. I have a 10-year-old girl. I heard you speak on the TV that recession sucks for workers, but for banks, they're really good things. I saw stats that state that wealth is being sucked up from the bottom to the top. So it's an urgency that I write you today. Everyone you love, or at least pretend to love, depends on what you do and say. We need Medicare for all. We need college debt to go, and we need families freed from their camps. We need to save the environment before the Antarctic melts. We need to have rent control and protection for people to live in their homes. Oh, and the coronavirus is spreading like wildfire from sea to sea. We need test kits and who can argue that these are radical things I say? So what can you do, Mr. Dimon? I beg of you to change your ways. We both know what's coming. Many people will get hurt, and it doesn't have to be this way. See, socialism for the rich won't work for long, and you can only arm so many of us to get us to bite our tongue. You know what I say is true, so please do not play the fool. Come on, Jamie. You know what is right. We are waiting. There is no more quantitative easing. A $20 veggie burger doesn't taste any more amazing. Come on, Jamie. We are waiting. I promise you, you will feel good. You will feel amazing. If for once you did what was right by the human line and not just the bottom line. Toby Green, March 2020. So that's my poem. Let's change tracks just to show you kind of how the coronavirus is hitting locally here. I went out to go pick up my wife and kid today. Not my wife and kid. My wife went with me to go pick up my kid. And we went out, and the kid was hungry. And she was like, okay. She loves Taco Bell. Taco Bell is her place to eat. That is her jam. So we stopped by Taco Bell, and she loves the Nacho Bel Grande. Loves Nacho Bel Grande. And we go there, and the order gets messed up. I ordered for my wife, and okay, it sucks. So, we're not upset. Nothing's a big deal. We turn around, we go back into the parking lot, and my wife, being the saint that she is, says, okay, hey, I'm going to go walk in and get the order right. We don't have to go through drive-thru. Right when we got up there, they posted a sign that said that they're shutting down their dining room hall due to the coronavirus. So we couldn't walk in. We had to go through drive-thru again. I don't really have an ending for this story. There isn't like a funny punctuating thing, but all across America today, more and more closures are being announced. New York City just announced their schools are going to be closed. Everybody's closing. Bars and restaurants, they're also closing. It's a massive, massive slowdown. Basically, America is coming to a halt. The America that you knew, that I knew, that we grew up in, it's dead, or it's going to be dead. It's whatever emerges after this is over is going to look at least a bit different than what America looks like today. So it's in this background, with everything closing down, more and more closures taking place, that Wall Street got a little jittery. Okay, well, you know what's coming. If you followed the first podcast, you know that basically the Federal Reserve, which is, let's keep in mind, is pretty much an independent, it's kind of like, it's a complicated relationship that it has with the federal government, the Fed does, which sounds like nuts to say it that way, but that's basically what it is. So the Fed is not actually under any legislative control. They're largely independent from government. They're largely an independent body. Now, the president can nominate who he wants or she wants to run the Fed, but generally speaking, their day-to-day decisions they get to make those decisions. The president doesn't make them, the Fed does. So in reality, they're probably the head of the Fed is pretty much one of the more powerful people in the Western civilization, if not the most powerful. So they went and announced a new quantitative easing proposal, and quantitative easing is different. So we talked yesterday or on the last podcast about repurchasing agreements, and how that's kind of like a shell game, but it's not straight QE. It's not straight quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is literally where the Fed will buy dollar bills and different types of financial properties. They'll buy it. And in doing so, they are artificially expanding what we would call liquidity, so that the stock market and these folks have money to go gamble. That's what the money's being used for. So inevitably, they announced a $700 billion plan. In addition, they announced that they are going to do quantitative easing, and they're going to do $700 billion. So we are now upwards to almost just in the last week, about $2.2 trillion in money being printed. Now, the reason that they're trying to do this ostensibly is to get banks to not seize up, continue lending money, and continue basically doing stuff. The problem is that banks are going, well, wait a minute, you want us to continue printing money, continue lending money. You want us to continue lending for homes, continue lending to businesses and corporations. You want us to do all this stuff. That's great. The problem is we don't see any investment potential because China's still mostly shut down. Italy had a major outbreak. Every schools and churches and bars and companies are all starting to shut down. The retail market's taking a hit. Everything is shutting down, and you're wanting to give us money. Money for what? We couldn't, even if we weren't criminally negligent human beings, we can't use that money for anything. That's basically what we're seeing. So despite them doing that, which was to ward off another massive collapse, the Dow Jones futures dropped by $1,000, and it actually hit the circuit breaker for the futures. So tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up with the Dow Jones down 1,000 points in trading. They actually had to turn it off. So how will the government react? I don't know. But I can tell you this, that the government, that knowing our government and knowing where the United States is at, there will not be anything spared to get the United States back, to get the stock market back on its feet. I have major problems with this approach. Once again, I said before, when they do these quant easings and these things, it is equivalent to giving ibuprofen for a broken ankle. Instead of setting the ankle right. You can come up with lots of analogies. The bottom line is this. They aren't treating the root problem. And the root problem right now is you have a virus that is shutting things down across the globe. So you have to act on that issue first. And then if you need to get liquidity in or do whatever you need to do, great, go do that. But the problem is the Trump administration and the Fed, and keep in mind, the Fed is only caring about the Fed. They're only caring about the stock market. They're not caring about you. I want to be really clear when I say this. The Fed does not care about you, doesn't care about your family, doesn't care about your mommy, your daddy. They don't care about you. The Fed doesn't care about that stuff. The Fed cares about, are the banks prospering and making money? If the answer is no, then they will move heaven and earth to make that happen. Now, part of that does include you. If you aren't going out and buying stuff, if you are gripped with fear, we were warned about this, by the way, in September 11th. Afterwards, we were warned that, hey, if you didn't go out shopping, the terrorists win. That's what we were warned with. Well, it took 20 years. But this is where we're basically at. Where we're basically at is that everything's shutting down over the next 2 weeks. I'm hearing upwards to 8 weeks it could be shut down in craziest, wildest proposals. So it is likely to me that all of this is happening is, again, it's a temporary lift, but the Wall Street stockbrokers whose job it is to shield their own wealth are saying, oh man, things are really bad. And this is really important because I expect more news tomorrow or the next day from the Fed or from Donald Trump. They slashed the interest rates to zero. It's wild what's going on. So there's clearly worry that things are going to gum up here. 2.2 trillion apparently is not enough to get the stock market going again, in addition to the $20 billion that's been being basically printed off, helping out in the repo market since September. Folks, my point is on all this. Take a deep breath about all this stuff. My guess is that some news will come out tomorrow, and I would be stunned, although I'd be wrong. There's going to be something that will happen probably tomorrow that will move the stock market into the green, and you'll see suddenly a positive stock market tomorrow. Maybe not. Maybe it'll go down by 2,000-3,000 points. Maybe they'll even stop trading during the day. If they do, I don't know what tools the Fed has, and I certainly don't know what any other tools are. The bottom line is this: until this coronavirus gets under control and people are able to go back out shopping and living and doing the stuff without fear of the contagion, it's going to be bad news.